Grief, frustration, and anger on full display in a Texas courtroom.
When I walked by, Mr. Wright looked at me and he said, "You're gonna burn in hell."
A hearing over the future of Camp Mystic. What comes next as lawmakers prepare to visit the site? A shakeup on Capitol Hill as scandal pushes a Texas congressman to step down. Could the change open the door for Democrats to flip a seat in D.C.? A battle is brewing over who controls data center growth in Texas.
We want to protect our property rights, and I totally understand that.
We look at the steps local leaders and rural Texans are making to push lawmakers at the Capitol to take action.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. On Monday, 10 Texas lawmakers will travel to Hunt, Texas to visit Camp Mystic. It's the location where 25 children and 2 teenage counselors were killed by floodwaters on Independence Day last year. The visit comes after a tense court hearing where camp leaders testified. Capitol reporter Dylan McKim previews the lawmakers' visit.
10 lawmakers, 5 from the Texas Senate and 5 from the Texas House, will conduct a site visit of Camp Mystic on Monday. The lawmakers are part of an investigative committee tasked with looking at the facts of what happened on July 4th last year and to find answers for the families that lost their daughters. This will be the first ever meeting of the committee since its formation late last fall. We learned more about what happened the night of the floods this past week in civil court during 3 days of an evidentiary hearing. Camp Mystic is challenging a judge's order that prevents them from making renovations to its Guadalupe site. Attorneys representing Seal Stewart's family, who is the only camper whose body has not been found, challenged one of the co-directors of the camp, Mary Liz Eastland, about her actions to protect campers that night.
Seems like you only helped the campers named Eastland, is that correct?
Well, my children aren't campers.
It seems like you only helped the children whose names were Eastland, is that correct?
Those were the only ones I could get to.
Those are the only ones that you thought about, correct?
That's not true.
It seems like Eastland's only save Eastland's, correct?
That's not true.
Camp Mystic is trying to reopen its Cypress Lake site this summer. That site is 2 miles uphill from the flood-ravaged Guadalupe site. The camp has applied to renew its license with the Department of State Health Services. The agency has not made a decision on their license as of Sunday. A spokesperson with the camp did tell Nexstar that 900 girls are enrolled to attend camp with them this summer. Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
The visit by lawmakers comes after a court hearing where Camp Mystic leaders testified. Capitol Bureau reporter Adam Schwager covered all 3 days of that hearing. You also covered the immediate aftermath of these floods in the Hill Country last summer. What are some of the new things we learned this week?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just letting those Camp Mystic leaders tell us in their own words exactly the chaos that was unfolding around them on the morning of July 4th in those overnight hours. Now, a lot of this hearing was based off a court order that was issued last month, which prevents the camp from altering basically any of those structures that was affected by the flood because they want to preserve evidence for all 5 of these court cases that are coming up and for any evidence and investigations that might happen. So they wanted to argue that some of the buildings that were under this order didn't need to be under the order and could be used in upcoming years or could be used for storage or stuff. But a lot of the things that we were learning about it was what plans they had in place that night, what plans they maybe didn't have in place or possibly should have had in place, but also just the chaos that was unfolding around them because you just hear they didn't even know that this was going to be the magnitude that it was when it was 2 a.m. And it really wasn't until these waters started coming down and walls of water started coming down that they realized that they had to do something, and that was very quick between when they thought it was just a normal rain event between when they realized, oh, this is a flood of epic proportions.
So on Monday, lawmakers are headed to the Camp Mystic site. Who's going and what are we expecting to come out of that visit?
Yeah, so there's a joint investigating committee that was put together right at around November 5 members from the Senate, 5 members from the House, and they're going to go on site to take a visit of Camp Mystic and the Guadalupe River area on Monday. We're not personally allowed on site because that judicial order bars people, except for those investigating agencies, from going on the site to disturb it. So because they're investigating, they have their investigation, they'll go on site. We're going to try to catch up with some of those lawmakers on Monday afternoon after they get out, and they're going to go on site. Obviously, there's still Texas Rangers investigations that Dan Patrick has alluded to that will also be going on site at a certain point. DSHS, who has to approve the camp for next summer, will also need to go on site as a part of investigations they're doing into last summer. So that's the main people who will be entering this site in the foreseeable future.
All right, Adam Schwager, Capitol reporter, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
A congressman resigns following reporting on allegations of sexual misconduct, how one journalist helped uncover the story, and what comes next. Rural Texans are pushing the legislature for more oversight when it comes to data centers, the steps some small communities are making to take on big tech. As death investigations rise, one county is rethinking how they handle autopsies. We examine the options on the table and why the status quo may not be sustainable. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzales announced his resignation Monday. This comes after he admitted to an affair with a former staffer who later took her own life. The resignation comes after reporting brought new details to light about the accusations. And much of that reporting came from journalist Bayliss Wagner, who joins us now. Thank you for being here.
So glad to be here.
So Gonzales denied these accusations when they first surfaced, but your reporting helped change that. When did you first realize there was a deeper story beyond the initial accusations?
A deeper story. I think, so that was back in February when we got in touch with a staffer who had text messages that showed that Regina Santos Aviles, the woman that was allegedly at that point, there were rumors that she had been in an affair with the congressman. She texted him, the staffer, and said, "I had an affair with our boss." And the staffer also knew about 2 meetups in a cabin that his family owned in the Uvalde area. That was the first time that any reporter, it seemed, had gotten documentary evidence, and that was when it became very real.
Now that he has stepped down, is this story over?
I don't think so. I think that this is opening, first of all, I think that it's very possible that more could come out about him. You never know. I was not massively surprised when I got in touch with the second woman who said that he had propositioned her during his 2020 campaign. But I also think that this has opened a line of discussion in DC about this kind of behavior, which seems to be very prevalent in DC and in politics, but has become taboo in most companies and most workplaces. Most HR policies say you cannot aggressively proposition a subordinate. So I think we could absolutely see more about this kind of behavior.
Gonzales was the second congressman to resign this week. California Democrat Eric Swalwell stepped down amid allegations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct. Has your reporting signaled anything larger, or is anything happening more often? Why are people speaking out now?
Yeah, I think I've learned more about more accusations and more rumors. I think that people are speaking out now. I think that what happened with Regina may not have come out except that she died by suicide in a very tragic way by setting herself on fire outside of her home. And that really makes you wonder, how many times are there cases in which people don't speak out? The second woman who spoke out, she said she was older than Gonzales, and she kind of almost was like, well, this is just the behavior that I'm used to. She said she was in the military and she got used to men flirting with her and being aggressive in terms of making advances, and that she realized for a younger woman this would be very hard to resist in the way that she did. And that's part of why she came forward. So, and I also think that, this sends a message to women that if they speak out, there may be justice. And there may be people who are ready to say, we will protect you, we will give you a job if you get fired by someone for speaking out.
Well, I want to shift to the political impact behind this. This was already going to be an open seat in Congress. Gonzales is a Republican, so does the scandal create an opening for Democrats to flip that seat?
Yeah, and I think that that's a real threat for the Republicans. Governor Greg Abbott has to set a special election. And there was sort of an idea right when this happened that, well, okay, Eric Swalwell, the Democrat, is going to step down, Gonzales is going to step down, it's a wash. But Swalwell's seat is far safer than Gonzales's. Gonzales's seat is about 7 points to the right. And at a time when Republicans are losing support from Hispanic voters, which they make up the majority of that district, and they've been overperforming in special elections, Republicans could absolutely get caught flat-footed if they go forward with this special election immediately. And so I think we'll be able to tell what Republicans' sense is of their chances when we see the date that Abbott sets for that special election. He may wait until November.
We shall see. Bayliss Wagner, Austin Bureau reporter for the San Antonio Express News. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here, Josh.
Data centers bring investment, but also concerns about power demand and water use. It's pushing people in rural counties to ask for help from the state. How that could lead to action at the Capitol. When death investigations fall behind, the consequences ripple through the courts and families. How one county is weighing what to change to keep up with growing needs. An update now to our project, A Hanging on Backbone Creek. It revealed the lack of medical examiner offices across Texas, leaving most death investigations to justices of the peace, who have little medical training and forensic expertise. After our interview with State Representative Rafael Anchia, who pushed for a change last legislative session, a House interim charge calls for closely examining the law establishing an ME office in counties without one, the population threshold triggering that law, and the potential expansion of inter-county medical examiner districts. Anchia tells us it's time to modernize a broken death investigation system and promises to finally get it done next legislative session starting in January. Investigator Arezow Doost joins me now. You've been looking at this issue for a long time in one of the fastest growing counties in the state, Williamson County.
Yes, and what's happening there is playing out in majority of the counties across the state where the JPs do the initial investigating and certifying of unattended deaths. That's where someone is died and a determination hasn't been made as far as the cause of death. So then if a determination isn't made, the body is sent off for an autopsy elsewhere.
And that can be very costly, we know, and you told us how the 4 JPs in Williamson County have been working to keep pace with the growing number of death investigations there, on top of all the other courtroom duties they have.
Absolutely. They've been telling us about this for years. And you know, the state law says that if a county has a population of 2.5 million, then it must have a medical examiner's office. But a county commissioner's court could really establish one at any point, which is the direction Williamson County decided to move over a year ago, even though it's a long ways from hitting that population threshold.
Yeah, what is the timeline for establishing a medical examiner office in Williamson County?
That is the million-dollar question, and the county judge says it's still in progress, and in fact they're exploring another solution, the regional approach you mentioned, which could actually mean getting this medical examiner's office up a lot faster and even tackling more cases.
Year after year, I see us needing a medical examiner and standing up that office in the near future.
Williamson County Judge Stephen Snell says he understands the urgency and has tasked the county manager to research and explore options.
We're not alone in not having a medical examiner's office. That when we stand one up, is it possible to stand it up with other counties, to partner with other counties, to share the cost?
Who would you partner up with?
We would look at other counties to the east, to the west, and to the north. Several of those counties who don't have a medical examiner, they transport bodies to Dallas.
Williamson County has a home for the future medical examiner office off Lake Creek Parkway and Highway 183 in North Austin, a former Texas Department of Transportation facility undergoing renovation right now for a 911 call training center and law enforcement crime investigation lab. The county approved the purchase of the facility in October 2024. Since then, data obtained by KXAN shows the number of death investigations there has increased 22%. Last year, 4 death investigators started working with the justices of the peace to bridge the gap until the county opens its ME office.
As we grow, as we increase the number of deaths we're having to investigate, how can we come up with a more efficient system that saves the taxpayer money and provides the services required by the state?
The county covers the cost of sending bodies for autopsies performed by either Hill Country Forensics, a local private forensics firm, or in neighboring Travis County. Data we obtained shows in 2024 and 2025, Williamson County spent nearly $4 million on autopsies. The justices of the peace say it's one reason the county needs its own autopsy services. In a joint statement, they wrote, relying on distant facilities or shared regional options cannot replace the immediacy, reliability, and thoroughness that a dedicated, accredited medical examiner's office provides. We owe it to the families we serve, as well as to our law enforcement and medical communities, to ensure that these services are available locally and promptly.
I think anything we can do to make it a regional effort and save the taxpayers money, I think would go a long way, not only for serving our county, but other counties and their needs as well.
By when do you hope Williamson County has an up and going medical examiner's office?
Well, in a year, we'll definitely have the data we need to see where we stand on the capital improvements to the Lake Creek building. I think I can say that with certainty. And then we'll also have data on what other counties are interested in a regional approach. And then we can have some timelines from there. But I don't see this dragging on.
SNAL says it could cost the county about $8 million to establish a medical examiner's office. Nothing's been set in the budget for next year. Now, SNAL was appointed to this position more than a year ago. He recently won the Republican primary and will be running against Heather Jeffs in November. She says having people without medical training determine cause and manner of death can put cases involving murder and suspicious deaths at risk, and adds it's time for the county to move into the 21st century.
So whoever ends up being the judge after November might be exploring this regional approach that we talked about, and that could help Williamson County with things like costs and sharing resources with the neighboring counties it ends up partnering with if it does happen. And that could be contingent on whatever the legislature decides, because they might have to approve the expansion of regional districts throughout the state. But that's something that they're going to be studying in the coming weeks. We know a Texas House interim committee has been charged with looking at that very issue right here at the Capitol in the coming weeks.
And Josh, lawmakers already have a blueprint in North Texas. Tarrant County partnered with several of its neighboring counties to share funding and resources to have a regional service.
We know you will stay on top of this issue. Thank you very much, Arezow. Catch up on our coverage of this issue online now and explore the A Hanging on Backbone Creek project, highlighting the push for counties across Texas to establish medical examiner offices. Just look for the link in this week's State of Texas story on our website.
The county doesn't always know what's happening right in our own backyard.
Small communities taking on big tech. How rural Texans are pushing the legislature for more oversight when it comes to data centers. Texas is seeing a boom in data center development, and it's bringing significant changes to rural parts of the state. The rapid growth has some rural Texans raising concerns about everything from noise to the strain on the electric grid and demand for water. In north central Texas, one longtime water well driller says aquifer levels are dropping fast. He's been tracking water data in the area for decades. As Dylan McKim reports, it's a key reason why some Texans are asking lawmakers to step in.
These are well logs right here.
Eddie Pollock has a paper trail of water well logs that stretch decades.
Water came in 55 feet of the surface.
Even logs from the 50s, written in his dad's handwriting.
Here's 57.
He was just 11 when Texas went through the worst drought in its history.
In the 50s, we had plenty of water in the aquifer, even though we were having a drought as far as rainfall.
Today, it's a different story.
Those wells would make 400 gallons a minute. Today, they make 50.
In 1972, Eddie drilled a well at his home in Somervell County and found the water 22 feet below the surface. Today, that water is now 212 feet below the surface. His findings, along with the potential for large-scale data centers near his rural area, have Pollock worried.
They're pulling water out of the groundwater. They're pulling water out of streams.
Mark Hayes lives in neighboring Johnson County. A majority of his career has been focused on developing data centers around the country. He supports bringing the vital facilities to Texas, and he says there are ways to do it responsibly.
In any scenario, we need to put restrictions, covenants, and laws in place that allows and protects the local environment.
Both men testified at the Johnson County Commissioners Court meeting this week. The commissioners approved a resolution that states they want responsible data center development in their county. But that resolution cannot stop a data center from being greenlit. The counties really don't have any power to stop a data center development or even know if one is being built.
The county doesn't always know what's happening right in our own backyard.
Their resolution calls on the state legislature to pass a law giving them authority in land use in relation to large-scale data centers.
Okay.
Their state representative, Helen Kerwin, said she supports policy that addresses property rights that can help counties protect their resources and ensure responsible data center development.
We want to protect our property rights, and I totally understand that until AI appeared.
Pollock has shifted the family business to his son, but he still is speaking up to lawmakers in an effort to protect his family's future.
You just don't want your children and grandchildren not have water.
Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
In March, you may remember Representative Kerwin called on Governor Greg Abbott to put a moratorium on data center developments in rural areas. Kerwin now tells us she plans to write a letter to the governor next week to ask him to call a special session to address data centers in Texas. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.